right, everybody. Hello, hello, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here for this fireside chat. My name is AJ Eckstein. I'm the founder of Creator Match, a LinkedIn creator marketing platform, as well as a writer for Fast Company. First off, I want you to start thinking of some questions throughout the session. We're going to leave a few minutes at the end for Q&A. And I always love to kick off these chats with a question from you, our audience. So by a show of hands, how many folks have ever created a WordPress website? I know I have a personal one. Almost the entire crowd. So, and I see one in the front right here. Today, we are joined by Jason Cohen, the founder and chief innovation officer of WP Engine, which is the #1 hosting platform for WordPress in the entire world that powers 1.2 million websites, which is just a mind-boggling number to think about, Jason. And you are a founder that has one of the most incredible backgrounds that I have ever seen. You are a founder that has been bootstrapped, a founder that has raised funding. You have done the hardware, done the software. You've exited 2 companies. All 4 of your startups have led to 1 million in ARR. And now you're on your 4th company, WP Engine. So what has been just your experience like? We'll start with bootstrapped versus getting venture. I'm sure a lot of people in the crowd are thinking about what way to navigate.
What's it like for 25 years making stuff? It's hard. That's what it's like. It's all hard. I think people are saying, it's easy for indie hackers like to say, oh, it's so easy. People just gave you money, so it's easy. And of course, people who raise money are like, it's easy for you. You just do your side project and call it a business. It's all hard.
And within hard, do you think it's easier to find a co-founder so you're in the foxhole together, or do you say no, retain more equity and stay a solo founder?
Yeah, this is the perennial debate. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there that says you should have exactly 1 co-founder, 2 is the best number because you have someone to commiserate with, someone to keep you honest. I think that's true. For me personally, I have to be a solo founder. Probably a personal failing, like a personality failing, but I think you have to know yourself and do that first. It's interesting when you look at things like Paul Graham and Y Combinator, they say they have data that shows that companies with 2 founders are more likely to succeed, but also the data show that the #1 reason why companies fail is co-founder strife. So to me, what I conclude from that is that it's high beta, meaning like it's both it just increases variability, which is probably good actually, because the startup needs to be an outlier. Even if if you're not taking a lot of risk and you're building something kind of normal, you might say, not trying to grow it too much. Still, most businesses fail anyway. Most restaurants fail, and they're not trying to be anything. So you're some kind of special, some kind of outlier, and so having anything, even if it increases the risk of failure a little like that, maybe if it increases the risk of success as well, maybe it's a good idea. But not for me personally. So I think first it's where will you be strong, and how can you thrive, and build like what is your strategy, what market should you be in, what kind of company is it, what goals do you have around that. That's when you'll be strong.
And speaking on failure, you said that you've done the hardware route as well as the software route. I think we all can agree hardware is not easy. What were some of your experiences going down both paths, and what did you learn with each?
Well, so the thing with hardware is, of course, you're building something, and so you have things like returns. Like in software, we don't even think about returns. We just call them uh, giving the credit card money back. We just don't care. In hardware, it's a big deal, especially because your margins are obviously lower. So let's suppose you only make 20%. That's actually pretty good for hardware, but let's suppose you make 20%. Okay, so one return, which often there's a lot of shipping costs, half the time it's broken. Maybe that was your fault, maybe it was their fault, maybe it's broken on the way back. Anyway, it's a loss. So you have to sell like 5 more of them just to make up for the one return, just to come back to 0. So in hardware, like returns are the worst ever. In software, we never even think about it. We're like free trial, and I don't know what's the worst that could happen. We give them we credit them, and we're correct in software to say that. In hardware, you have no such thing. So, or building the thing, it's obvious that you have a bunch of parts. So we had a very simple product, still had 120 parts in the bill of materials, but vendors are unreliable. So for every line item, you have multiple vendors and inventory to manage. Like there's just all this stuff. So of course that makes it really hard and expensive because you have to pay for all this before you get money. The good news is because it's hard, it's very hard to have competitors. So there's some things in companies where it's hard to do, but there's no advantage. So those are bad. So stuff like picking a bad market that's where people aren't spending money and it's shrinking, that's hard. There's not really an upside to it. So that's a bad idea. But in hardware, it, at least if the idea is good, yes, it's very hard to get started and get it rolling. That keeps other competitors out. You'll only have, a few competitors. And so that being difficult earns you something useful. Therefore, that kind of difficulty might be strategically good.
So it's extremely difficult, but if you can solve it and can achieve it, it's a competitive advantage for your
Yeah, like
business.
in software, we all know you can't protect anything. I have a patent. Who gives a crap? When was the last time you heard anyone not compete with the company because they had a software patent? It doesn't happen. Or what if Google does it? Yeah, I know. What if anybody does it? What if another two people in the garage do it just like you? And the answer is yes, of course. So in hardware, that's not true. It's not true that two people in the garage can just do it. So that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just at least that difficulty comes with some strategic advantage in software you just don't have.
And Jason, I understand that you have a fun nickname, a smart bear. Where did that nickname come from, and can you kind of explain it?
My third company was called Smart Bear. So I was a smart bear. What happened is I started a blog there because this was 2007 and blogging was cool. I think maybe now it's cool again. I'm not sure. I never stopped, but I don't think that means it's cool. And I made it the company blog, and the idea is we'd be like 37 signals, and this will be our voice and our culture. And then no one wrote on it but me, which maybe was a signal of culture. I don't know. And anyway, it became mine. I just needed to name it something that's smart bear but different. So it was just a smart bear. There was stuff like AVC was a popular thing. It still is. So it's kind of in that same vein. It was a common way to do it. So anyway, because it became mine, then I was a smart bear on Twitter and blah blah blah. So I just stayed with that because that's how I got well known.
Amazing. And today's discussion, we're going to dive super deep into PMF, product market fit. But before we even talk about what to do when you have it, how do you know when you have it in the first place?
So the qualitative way is it, there's a sea change, there's a sudden shift in how the business feels, and it goes from every every sale is a struggle. You celebrate because someone signed up today. It's really hard to plumb the marketing channels. You'll do PR just to get one thing in. It's a success. It's just hard scrabble to get people to come in, and the sea change happens, and all of a sudden, the orders just start coming in, and you don't even often know why. You're just like, whoa. And now support is trashed because there's way more tickets than we can do, and then the feature requests are coming in. You don't even know what to do with that. Stuff starts breaking because it wasn't designed for whatever is now happening, and it's just like now you're in the shit in a good way. So it's the good problem to have, but a problem. And so that's the qualitative thing as that happens. I think people who have gone through it, they're like, yes, it's really obvious. And people who haven't, they try to claim they have it because they haven't seen that. And so they're just like, I have more customers than before, so I have it. And it's like, no, that's not what it looks like. Then quantitatively, you can tell, I think, in two ways. One is the growth curve goes from this to this. Like there's this bend. Not forget percentages, just in absolute things, it's fine, and then oh my god, what the hell? And it doesn't bump, it just keeps going. And so that's the, I guess, numerical way to see. I have a post on this at asmartbear.com if you want to see, where I have lots of data to demonstrate this from bootstrap companies, from VC funded companies, even content creators with their newsletters. Like everywhere you can see this, like, oh, now it's working kind of a thing. The second way is cancellations. If you have 7% monthly cancellation, that means that after a year, most of your customers have left. What that means is they disagree that your product is right for them. That means you don't have fit. Now, you could also make the financial argument. You can't grow very much and that's all true too, but it's actually not the point. The point is the customers are going, I heard you, I heard your message, I read your homepage, I liked your positioning, I liked your pricing, I invested time, and I still say no. Damn, that means no. you know? So that means you don't have fit yet. So for a consumer product, you need to be less than 4% per month, and for business I think less than 3% per month, especially small business. Now, that's obviously just a guideline. That's not perfect, but 7 is bad.
So let's say that I'm sitting in the audience right now and I'm like, Jason, a smart bear. Those are excellent takeaways that I wrote down. I'm going to take them back to my company. Fast forward a few months, we achieved product market fit, thinking about the qualitative and the quantitative. How do I understand the balance of exploring new projects as well as executing what's working? Because you can't do the same playbook that you've done once you just achieved PMF.
Right. So the first thing that happens is because you're now in the shit, you have to dig out. And so there's no time for like, we'll make a new product. It's like, we can't service the current product. So there's this time period, maybe I should give it a name, I don't know, but there's this time period where it's sort of like this J curve where you go even worse. Cause like, all right, we got to hire people. Fortunately, we have revenue, so we can, hooray. By the way, get those annual plans on there, because annual plans means we get all this cash forward and we can hire people now. So go put the annual plans on the page right away so that we get the cash so we can go fix this. So you hire people, but you're having to go recruit, which you weren't doing before, and then interview, which takes time, and then once they quit their job and they're here, you have to train them, but you don't have any training materials because you didn't make them, and you shouldn't have. Like, that's correct, but now what happens. And if you're distributed, it's much worse because they can't just physically sit next to you and watch. So actually, it's really hard to do this if you're distributed. Anyway, so you do this, so you're like, it's even worse because you're spending all this time like training new people and finding them. So even less time to solve the problem. So then you finally dig out. I think for WP Engine, we went through this in 2012. I would say it wasn't until mid 2013 that we had dug out, and then we could like stay on top of the support tickets and et cetera. Of course, hiring isn't the only thing. I'm just giving an example of like activities. You also should say stuff like, well, if we're getting that many tickets, the product probably could be fixed somewhat so that we don't, so there's obviously many things you're going to do about it, but okay. Anyway, once you're out of that, then you're in this more, like, it's still hard because things are still changing rapidly. The organization is changing. You're hiring different kinds of people like managers. What is that? Communications changing. So all this stuff is difficult that's happening, but you at least get out of this red zone and you're into like, it's really hard still, but I'm kind of managing it. At that moment on, you could decide what you just said. Should we expanding a market, going to a new geo, making a second product, making a really big new feature in the current product, changing our ICP, etc. Like, you can start considering that once you're out of the shit. And there, I think there's a couple of guidelines. One is stuff like, have you saturated a marketing channel such that you have to do something new to grow more? That could be another marketing channel. It could be a different geo. Again, it could be a new product in the same channel. Like, there's different things you could do. But like, if my marketing channel's saturated, I'll have to do something different. So that's an example of, I guess I'll need to actually make a big change. Another one could simply be, now that we're generating $1 million a year in profit, we can afford to like put a team on something and they fail. You can literally afford it. Like, or okay, have $250,000 a year in profit, we can try for 3 months, or whatever. So if you can literally afford to do it, then you can make a bet that can fail. That's a bigger bet. And so that might be a moment where it's like, now it's time for us to try that because we can apply the investment needed to try it.
And if I'm let's say a salesperson at WP Engine, and we've been targeting one vertical, one customer demographic, and we think we're crushing it, and we're really penetrating this area, what defines penetration for Jason, where you say, okay, we've checked that off, we are crushing it, we can move to that next vertical, versus you saying, no, we still have more to give in that area?
It's hard to tell because sometimes you don't know whether you really have tapped the potential of that or if you're just not good enough yet. So in something like the sales example, if you have reps that are just crushing it and others that are not, then probably there's space for more reps that are crushing it. If, however, there's reps that are very, very good, really, but they're still tapped out of what they can do, and they're great. It's like, well, there you go. Like, because even just hiring 100 more like them is like impossible, and so it's not there, But again, you could say like, well, marketing could get us more leads. So like, again, it's a little tricky to know in something like sales what that is. Now, sometimes you can do market research, but I find that a lot of that is just very rough data, and it's very hard to get good data. Another technique I use, though, in those cases is just powers of 10. Meaning like, okay, this market segment in this geo or whatever it is, like, are there 1,000 customers potential customers, 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10? Like, just within a power of 10, what's the answer? You can almost always do that with even just basic demographic data or stuff from the web. To get precise, no, but just to know whether it's like 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, you almost always can. So right there, you could say, okay, so if we're getting this many leads per month in here, closing this many, and there are this many in powers of 10, like, are we at 0.1% saturation, 1%, 10% saturation? If the answer is 10% or even 1%, that's kind of a lot. Like, you're probably tapped out. So although that sounds like it's not precise enough, it actually is to make a lot of kinds of decisions to know, oh, we're really far away from what it should be, or no, actually we're within 1 or 2 orders of magnitude of what's there. So yeah, like, we should optimize. Like we can probably get another 20% or even double maybe, but we're not going to get another 10. So we have to look elsewhere. So the power of 10 rule, easy to get the numbers, actually easy to make a lot of decisions that way.
And you mentioned the example of, okay, you have a million in profit. Now we actually have money. I don't want to say to burn, but more so to experiment, to test. And if it fails, it's not going to crater the company. And I think a dilemma that a lot of companies, when they reach such scale, fall into this trap is that since they have so many people, they put few people on multiple projects versus multiple people on few projects. And I got that from your blog, A Smart Bear, which is a great blog, by the way, for everyone in the crowd. So walk me through that understanding that logic and where people fall into that trap and how you could be a massive company losing to a startup of five because all five people in that startup are all in on one focus versus you with 100 people have one person on 20 different projects.
Yeah, that's the answer. You just said it. Yeah, especially a startup because they're passionate and maybe even good at their thing, whatever their thing is. So let's say they're really good at YouTube videos. All right. And so you say like, oh, YouTube is an area we want to get into. That's fine. But if you have 100 people and you put three of them or two of them on YouTube videos, they'll make some YouTube videos and they won't be as good as that passionate, capable startup that is even five people. So even though supposedly you have more people, so you have more resources, more money, you have a better brand, you could hire experts, whatever that means, and yet you're actually investing in a certain sense less than the startup is. So you lose anyway. That's dumb. What you should be doing is leveraging the fact that you're bigger. How? By taking the money, the brand, the people, all these advantages that you have and focusing them on just a couple of things and crushing those things, because then a startup can't compete. If you put 20 people on something, then the startup of five people cannot beat you. You'll deliver faster, you'll do more stuff, it'll be more impressive, you'll get more press. Oh no, right? So yeah, if you dilute everything you're doing into a bunch of stuff, you've diluted the advantage that you have, which is you have a lot of bulk that you can apply. So an analogy that I have not used before, but I think is funny, it's in my mind, is when you dilute people, it's like the guy that lays on the bed of nails. And you can do that because there's so many nails, your weight's distributed. So don't do that. Have like one nail and then you just lay on it and get impaled. That's what you want.
I love that. That's such a visual analogy. And let's say that I want everyone in the crowd for a second to envision that they're a fly on the wall in your boardroom in the WP Engine office, literally across the street, 2 minutes away. And the team comes to you and says, Jason, we have 20 ideas for projects that we want to dive into. Obviously, we read your blog, A Smart Bear. We know that we have that analogy of the one nail versus the many nails. We want to dive into one or a few versus many. How do we actually think about prioritizing what projects to really dive into and focus on versus just doing everything and thinking about, oh, another shiny object or project?
So is the context for our current strategy, or is the context that we want to expand, like we were just talking about, into something new? Because the answer's different.
Yeah. Why not both?
Okay. If it's advancing what we're doing now, then I like to take stock of we have our strategy, and of course if you don't, then you don't even know what you're trying to do. So you start there. Okay, so we have that. If we were unencumbered by challenges and oh, that we lost this great person, this team, and oh, the customers are saying this. Okay, if we were unencumbered by all the challenges that are going around, what would be logical for us to do next in our strategy? Like, how would we advance that this next quarter or two? Because it's probably not the whole thing. So maybe it's like, yeah, we're really killing it with this one segment, or this one competitor is coming up, and we have these four things that will make sure that's not an issue. So like that's what we would focus on. So like, what are these and why? And just like 1 to 3 things tops. How would we advance our strategy? That's one. The second piece is, what are the 1 to 3 challenges that are just crushing us now? Oh, this team can't do anything because the people left. I don't know, reasons. So they're like, they can't do anything. Doesn't matter what your strategy is, they're screwed. Or yeah, this competitor's doing this, and like we have to react. Or the economy changed, and now companies are valued based on R40 and not growth. Well, that's what? Okay, and so what are these things that are preventing us from achieving whatever we just said we would do? And then finally, you can evaluate these 20 ideas, because now what you're saying is, we need things that attack these challenges so that they're not challenges anymore, or sidestep them. Oh, it's okay that team's in the shit. while they're getting back, look, we're going to work on stuff that doesn't even involve them. So they'll get a breather. We're going to focus on this other thing for a while. They'll get back to good, and they just won't be part of the critical path for what we're doing. So you can avoid or attack, yeah, and go do some of those couple of strategic things. So which of those 20 things do that? That would be my question. So we do that every quarter, by the way, what I just said. We do this.
And
And we,
is that the quarterly one pager that you're
yeah, I mean,
talking
it's
about?
probably 2 pages, but yeah. No, but yeah, like one or two. Like it can't be too long, but like you gotta, and it really aligns everyone on like why are we doing any of this stuff? How are we deciding what's important to do? It's not every last task. It's just what are the few big things. So that's how we do it. Is like what's going on now. And then if the question is, okay, we need to expand, like we were just saying, like we need to change something major. How do we decide what to do? There, of course, you want something that has high upside potential because whatever you do is a risk. It may not work. It's going to be hard. There certainly will be an investment, and so you want the upside to be very big because of the chance that this won't work. So it can't be like we're going to invest $1 million, $2 million of time, and it might generate a million in ARR. Like, well, that's not good enough. It needs to be might generate 10. And then when it only generates 3, we'll be happy anyway. That kind of a mindset. So it has to be like way outsized outcome in the first place. So that's the first filter for ideas. It has to be like that. And then the second filter is this question: how adjacent is this to our existing business? And the way I look at that is you take the departments that matter to you: sales, support, maybe design, maybe not, depends on the company, engineering, product, so forth. And then you ask for this new idea, which of these things evaluate like how much change will they need to make to achieve this. So it could be trivial. This is like the same as when we release a small feature. We just send an email and we're done. That's trivial. It could be a lot. Like we're gonna have to do some deep changing, maybe do some training. We're gonna have to get used to it. So that's a medium. And then the red is like we don't have the right people. We're gonna have to hire people or reorg, do skills we've never had before, whether we do them in house or not. So like super high risk, super hard. That's red. And so you guys end up with like green, green, yellow, red, green, green. And this is not a rule. Like you can have red stuff, like it's whatever. You're characterizing the cost and risk that way. And again, simple, just 3 choices, by the way. Green, and it's not a rubric. You're not going to add it up and make a score. It's not a Cosmo quiz. It's just saying this is the consequent, the difficulty of doing it and the risk. So what has the high upside, and then like what's it going to take? And so also you're going to be practical. Like, hey, our sales team is super healthy right now. So if they have to do something that's red, we can actually manage that. We're ready for that. We can do that. That'll actually be fun for them to do something new. Okay, that red thing's not a problem. Cool. But it could be, oh my gosh, our marketing team is getting crushed by all this stuff right now. They can't take on some big new, I mean, no way. So even the immediate circumstances might help dictate, what do you mean? So you still want the colors the way they are because it's just what you think the facts are, but your evaluation, you're going to consider these things. So at the end, it's not going to be a formula. These things aren't, right? But at least you said the bar's high on outcome potential and we understand what it's going to take-ish, or we understand the risk. Now we can pick from those 20, not in a rubric, but again, a lot of times many things fall away and you're having the right kinds of discussions about the remainder.
And I think, question for the crowd: how many founders or co-founders do we have in the crowd? I know there's 2, I believe, right here. Okay, I mean, ton of WordPress websites, a ton of founders. I think one of the biggest dilemmas I know that I have as a founder is everything lives in my head, right? You're asking your team why you're not executing, and they're like, well, you never told me to do this, and it lives in your head. And I'm sure for you as well, Jason, as the founder, you know where to go, but your team doesn't know where to go because they don't have anything written down. You spoke about this quarterly one pager. You spoke about all these strategies. So what is the importance of writing things down and documenting things to make sure that it translates to your thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of team members across the company to execute effectively?
Even writing it down doesn't transmit to 1,000 people. I don't think there's anything we've ever said or written that we have about 1,200 people that they all got. So sorry. So the reason that you have to repeat it verbally at the Thursday all hands, and also in the email, and also in Slack, and also in the video, and also in the one pager, and also in this Jira, is because like that's what it takes for a lot of people to get it. So there's a couple of consequences you could take away. One is when there's something you actually need everybody to know, you're going to invest a lot of time and media types to do it. So get ready for that. Number two, it better be very simple. Like whatever message you need everyone to know, it can't be that quarterly one page. That's too much information. So it better be like, okay, everyone, this year there's the three main themes, and that's it. That's all you get to transmit to that many people, right? Or right now, our biggest challenge is this one thing. Of course, you have other challenges, but you can't go there with that many people. It's too much. So simplicity of that, even though it's oversimplistic, it's reductive, meaning it's so simplistic that it's wrong. I know, but that's all that anyone can get communicated to. So fewer things, just the most important things, lots of media types. And then another thing you can conclude is we had better not make everyone have to know everything to succeed. It had better be that we understand, like everyone understands enough about what sales needs to do, and then that's it. Sales needs to manage their own shit, and it can't be that everyone has to get into there I mean, we can't do that. So some of that is trust, but some of that is when everyone has documents like this and has gone through that, it's easier to trust. Hey, sales has their quarterly memo. You can read it. Even if you don't understand half of it, you can see that they were really thoughtful and they're doing good stuff that ladders up to those couple of things we did say. So it's easier to trust at that point. So so we have about 50 product teams. When 50 people all have their stuff like that, you're like, somebody at the company can't know all that, but just the fact knowing that they've gone through that is like, all right, I think we know what we're doing, and that feels pretty good.
So I know we have a lot of founders in the crowd, and I think one of the things that at least keep me up at night is getting replaced as CEO. And I know that you didn't get replaced as CEO, you replaced yourself as CEO. And obviously it was an incredible strategic move as the company has achieved mass scale and you guys are very successful. So walk the entire crowd through what was the decision to replace yourself? Because I mean, you have to really understand what's best for the company rather than for yourself, because everyone wants to stay at their role, but you obviously made the best choice for the company and have succeeded because of it.
So there was an emotional piece and there was the intellectual piece. Intellectually, it wasn't too hard to see that that was the right thing to do because as we were scaling fast, as I was saying, the job that the CEO is at that point becomes things like hiring and managing an executive team. The relationship to the board starts changing. What it means to hire and do the people stuff is different, and so forth. We need to hire and manage a global sales team and so forth. And I was just like, not only do some of those things I haven't done before, I don't want to. Those sound horrible. I don't want to do that. I don't want to flog a sales team about their quota. I don't want to have to open an office in London by going over there and doing that. So it was a combination of don't want to and not good at it, and yet very clear the company needs it done. So now it would be different if you said, I've never done it, but I want to. I think as the founder or CEO, maybe you have the right to do that. Still, you'd have to ask, what else has to be put in place to support that? So clearly part of the answer is the team that you build around you and blah, blah, blah. Like there has to be other stuff put in place that works. But in my case, it's like, I don't even want to. Like, oh, well then don't. I mean, I don't, right? But then there's the emotional piece and the founder, whatever. So the short version, since I see the red light blinking, is I was at Wink Wine Bar here in town with one of our Series A investors. And he goes, I know what you're thinking. Because we'd already talked about this. It was clear we're going to hire it. I'm like, what? And he goes, you're thinking that one day you'll ring the bell on the NASDAQ and you want the credit. And I said, shit. And I launched into the usual, I know it's not just me, it's a whole team. He's like, I know, but I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's totally ego, just pure straight up ego. But also like, that's not bad. I mean, as the founder, what do you get? Long hours, all this stuff, maybe never get paid ever. I mean, if you don't get an ego boost from it, I mean, if you don't get that adulation as the founder, like, I mean, that's got to be one of the rewards. I don't feel bad about it getting rewarded that way, right? But then he said, here's the thing. You're the founder. You will always get the credit. Oh, wait a minute. I get to keep all the ego stuff and I don't have to do the job of a CEO. Shit, what am I doing? So that's the thing I needed to hear to get over that emotional piece and go like, wait a minute, I still look at us right now. And you're like, look at all this stuff you did. I'm like, yeah, I haven't even been the CEO of WVenture for 11 years and I'm getting the credit from you. Yes. See, I get it anyway. So that was what I needed.
And I know I said I'll leave time for one question from the audience. We are at time, but I will ask you one final question that my friend in the crowd did ask me to ask you. we co-work a ton at a place called Capital Factory in downtown, which you were one of the founding members. It's a co-working space and an incubator for startups. Spent way too many long nights there and way too many cups of coffee. What is the importance of mentorship super fast in your life as you're a busy founder? How important is mentorship?
Well, I feel like my co-founder at IT Watchdogs 2 startups ago, it was my mentor. He wouldn't have said that. I've even said that out loud, and he's like, "What? No," because that's the kind of person he is, right? But he was. Um, so though that can take many forms, I've certainly experienced that in the right form, it's transformative. So then I did that somewhat at the Capital Factory as WP Engine started scaling was crazy. I did it less because I didn't have the time. But it's really fun on the other side. It's really fun. It's always fun to have interactions with young people who are doing interesting things. They're super excited about their idea, probably irrationally so, but that's fun, right? Like that's good. I mean, we should be honest about stuff, but on the other hand, like what? Don't be excited about things. Like, what's the alternative? This is really good. So it's fun for me. Another interesting thing about a thing like Capital Factory is there's a bunch of mentors, and so you meet other people that way, and that's also like a hidden kind of secret advantage of being an inventor. There is like, oh, the other mentors are interesting too. Everybody's interesting. Also, you learn a lot being a mentor. Like obviously, you can give your experience and stuff, and like so of course that way, but everyone's doing new things, and also the world's totally different. I don't know anything about TikTok. I don't even know anything about AI. Like everyone's doing crap, and so it's like there's constantly like, oh, we figured this out, and we're doing this, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So it also the information flows both ways when it's a good relationship. So it's pretty fun.
Amazing. Well, Jason Cohen, thank you so much. One more round of applause for our guest. Thank you, Jason.